What's up, guys? So now we're going to be looking into my top five worst picks from the first round of the 2020 NFL Draft. So to start, we're probably going to look at he was probably obviously the biggest reach of the draft so far, and that was Damon Arnett from Ohio State, who was picked up with the 19th pick by the Las Vegas Raiders. They definitely are a team that needed cornerback help, so the position does seem to make sense for them. But they did the classic overdrafting or reaching for their need, and by a lot. AJ Terrell and CJ Henderson were off the board at this point at 9 and 16. But when it comes to which cornerback you would pick next, he wasn't the first cornerback that came to mind. When you think of a next cornerback, you've Christian Fulton, Trayvon Diggs are probably the next two that pop into your head. Even Jalen Johnson, maybe, when you think about which corner you want to draft next. Damon Arnett was second, third. I even seen of one or two fourth-round projections when it comes to what round he would be drafted in. He has good size at 6 feet. He's 6 feet tall. He has good size. But with some weaknesses, when Ohio State, they had great pass rushers, so that obviously could make him not look as good. You obviously have, Jeff Okudah, who obviously played with him, who was a better cornerback than him. And in general, he was seen as a guy who is going to be a mid-round pick, who is a possible backup, maybe could become a starter. Or, like I said, at best, solid starter for your team. As a first-round pick, he does not fit the bill. This was, like I said, probably the biggest reach, especially since not only was they reached on him just because of need, but because he wasn't even the best cornerback available. So that is the first worst pick of the grouping. Next, I have Austin Jackson of the Dolphins. He was drafted at 18th by them. This is interesting because obviously you knew with one of the two first-round picks besides 5 that they were going to draft an offensive lineman to help out with Tua, mainly a tackle because tackle is the more valuable of the offensive line positions. The only thing is I did not expect it, like with the last one, I didn't expect it to be Austin Jackson. Me personally, I feel like there was other guys. He wasn't the best guy on the board. Josh Jones was still on the board, and Josh Jones is seen as someone who was borderline, possibly first-round pick, and they passed on him to get Austin Jackson. Also, another thing that hurts him is one of his weaknesses that people notice is he lacks technique. So with undisciplined footwork and not good technique, he's not a guy that's going to be a day one starter. Maybe for these Dolphins because of how bad they are, yes. But as a general baseline for talent, he is not a starting plug-and-play talent. And when you get a first-round pick, obviously that's partially what you're expecting. So you have a guy like Josh Jones who probably have a lot better chance of being a day one starter, and they pass on him to get Austin Jackson, who just wasn't as good of an offensive lineman, to be honest. Next, we have, which might surprise some people because a lot of people like this pick when it happened, at least so far from what I've noticed. And that's Derrick Brown for the Panthers, going at number 7. For me personally, Derrick Brown looks like someone who can be talented. He looks like he can be a great run-stopping defensive tackle. But you had Isaiah Simmons on the board, and I think he would have been a better fit for this team because when you look at who they have inside line, with Luke Kuechly retiring, the only inside linebacker they have is Shaq Thompson. They have Tahir Whitehead. Some other linebackers, they have Stephen Weatherly as their sub linebacker, and Brian Burns. Brian Burns is very good. He's more of an edge guy. But Weatherly, Tahir Whitehead, they don't jump off the board. Even in the safeties, T.J. Green and Trey Boston. Trey Boston is a solid starting safety, but even with T.J. Green is not really someone that's an established player at all. He was a second-round pick a couple years ago, but again, they could have definitely used a lot. Isaiah Simmons, his athleticism, to be able to cover the field, again, all the things I mentioned with what helps with the Cardinals applies to this, and they could have really used him. And what makes it worse is even though Derek Brown is talented, his position doesn't have as much value, a defensive tackle, compared to a linebacker, safety, even a corner. So to me personally, I think there was a player that was just as talented, probably more talented than Derek Brown, that was at a more important position for them and a position of need. So me personally, I don't like the pick of Derek Brown. It would be similar to like a Mekhi Becton. It would be more of like a C range, and not like an A, because of them passing on Isaiah Simmons. If Isaiah Simmons wasn't there, I could understand, but with Isaiah Simmons on the board, I don't know how you don't pass up. I don't know how you pass him up and pick Derek Brown. So next, we are going to cover from the worst picks is Justin Herbert, quarterback out of Oregon. Now, Justin Herbert, for the past, even with him being possibly in last year's draft, he was seen as, through the whole time, second to fourth best quarterback in both classes. So he didn't really up his draft stock a lot. He did up his draft stock, but his positioning didn't change much. But that's partially because of how good Joe Burrow did this year out of LSU. Now, Justin Herbert, he's the classic tall, big quarterback with a big arm and has some athleticism. Similar to Josh Allen. But when it comes to Herbert, I think there's weaknesses with him. I mean, he's a guy who played a dink and dunk kind of offense with Oregon. They're not known for pushing the ball deep. They're more slants, short passes, drags, screens. And when they did get to throw deep, it was mainly, there was a lot of times where they were more wide open passes. So we really don't know what his true touch is when it comes to deep passes. And in general, he lacks accuracy. I mean, it's the usual thing with these big, strong-arm quarterbacks that he lacks really the accuracy. And like I said, there's more particular things with his accuracy that you could, bicker with. But overall, all he's good for is he's a strong-arm quarterback who's athletic and has a strong arm without that much accuracy. So he's a high ceiling, but he also has a low floor, and he could really, to me, boom or bust. He is getting compared to Carson Wentz as a quarterback, but to be honest, I've seen him also get compared to. There was a video by a few people, and that actually said that he was similar to Mitch Trubisky, which I kind of agreed with. He's pretty much Mitch Trubisky with a better arm. So the good and bad of Trubisky is very similar to what you're going to get with Justin Herbert. And for the Chargers getting him at 6th overall, that's just not worth the 6th overall pick. And to be honest, they could have improved in other ways. They could have drafted a tackle. They desperately needed offensive line help. And they could have gotten one of the great offensive tackles that were left on the board. But they passed it up to get a quarterback who, in my opinion, isn't a franchise guy, and I don't think he ever will be. Like I said, some people are going to agree, some people are going to disagree, but to me, he isn't a star quarterback in the making. I think he's overhyped, and I don't think it was a good pick for the Chargers. So next, and last but not least, we have Jalen Reagor, who was picked 21st by the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, for Eagles fans, this pick definitely stung after seeing the Cowboys get CeeDee Lamb, arguably the best receiver in the draft, and had to watch their Eagles draft the 4th or 5th best receiver on the board. So, obviously, my opinion, Jalen Reagor was not the best wide receiver available. I think Justin Jefferson was a better prospect, and he was picked the pick after. So, like I said, this pick is not the best that the Eagles could have done. He was projected as between a 1 and 2. He was really starting to fall as we got closer and closer to the draft, at least media-wise. And it seemed like on most people's big boards he did. With him, he has some things that help his case that make him don't look as bad, which is with his combine, he had bulked up a lot before the combine, which made him run or get worse results because he wasn't the same athletically because it was a sudden increase of weight. And then another thing is, with being in TCU, they did not have great quarterback play, so his production doesn't necessarily equate to his actual talent. But his main calling card is that he's fast. He's fast. He'll be a long deep threat. Somewhat similar to what they have with kind of like the role Deshaun Jackson has there. But he's a guy that struggles beating press. Like I said, he's smaller. So just the general things that go with his size. Like I said, he gets stalled by the press. He doesn't really have ball skills to match the athletic ability that he has either. And he has drop issues too. I mean, he struggled with drops last year, which kind of gives me reminiscence of Nelson Aguilar, which is another bad Eagles pick. So with Nelson Aguilar having a faster version of that, I don't know if Eagles fans necessarily want that either. But overall, he's not first. He was a borderline pick. He wasn't the best receiver available. You had the drops, and like I said, he's just more of a speed return threat. And that's, like I said, there was better receivers you could have gotten, and so that's why he made the list as one of the worst picks of the draft. Either way, that wraps everything up. So comment and let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear about if you agree or disagree with some of the worst picks in the draft. And besides that, I'm out.